I always thought the moment I'd finally get my revenge would feel like fire, hot, violent, burning with fury. But the truth? It was cold, silent, calculated, and when it happened, no one, not even him, saw it coming. He thought I was out of the picture. He thought she was loyal to him, and he never realized I was the one who made her turn. Hi, my name is Olivia Carter, and this is the story of how my ex replaced me with his secretary, and how I made that same secretary replace him. Before I tell you what I did, and how far I was willing to go, I want to say something. If you've ever been betrayed, discarded, or made to feel like you're not enough, this story is for you. Not because it will heal you, but because it will show you what happens when a woman stops crying and starts planning. So hit the like button, subscribe to Revenge Fury, and turn on notifications. Because this isn't just a story. This is payback told step by step. Now, let's go back to where it all began. I met Derek Mitchell when I was 27, fresh out of business school and hungry. Not just for a career, but for someone who could match me. Derek was already established, 10 years older, confident, charming, and wildly successful. We worked in the same building. He was VP of Finance at a growing real estate firm. I was working my way up through the marketing team. Our connection was instant, fast, addictive. In 6 months, I moved into his high-rise condo. By year 2, we were talking about marriage. Not that I needed it. I was never the type of woman to beg for a ring. But he made the promises. He talked about forever. And I believed him. Derek wasn't just a man to me. He was my partner, my lover, my teammate. So when he started acting distant, I didn't suspect anything at first. It started small. Late-night emails. Business trips that suddenly got extended. He stopped reaching for my hand when we walked together. He stopped noticing when I changed my hair. And worst of all, he stopped looking at me the way he used to. I told myself it was stress, work. Maybe he was burned out. Maybe we were both just tired. Then one night, I came home earlier than expected from a work retreat. His car was in the garage. The lights in the kitchen were on. And I could hear laughter. Female laughter. Not mine. At first, I froze. Then I listened. Her voice was soft, younger. I recognized it. I'd heard it in passing, on speakerphone, outside his office, dropping off coffee. Haley James, the new assistant. I didn't barge in. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I simply walked into the hallway, pulled out my phone and recorded the audio. You see, that was the moment I stopped being hurt Olivia and became strategic Olivia. Because if there's one thing betrayal teaches you, it's how to stop reacting and start watching. Over the next few weeks, I did just that. I didn't mention what I heard. I didn't change my behavior. I let him think he was getting away with it. Meanwhile, I studied Haley. She was young, 24, fresh out of college, pretty in that polished, harmless way. She didn't seem like the type to plot or scheme. Which is exactly why I knew she was the perfect pawn. You see, I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted her to choose to destroy him. And for that to happen, she had to trust me. It took time. I started small. Friendly conversations in the hallway. Compliments on her outfits. Sharing harmless work stories about Derek from the past. Carefully edited ones, of course. She was hesitant at first, but flattered. She didn't know I knew. She didn't even know I was still in the picture. Derek told her we were on a break, that I'd moved out, that I was difficult. Typical. But the truth? I was still sleeping in his bed every other night. He was playing both of us, and I wasn't about to let him walk away clean. Haley wasn't innocent, but she wasn't evil either. She was young, impressionable, and clearly charmed by the idea of dating a powerful man. She didn't realize she was disposable to him, but I did, because I'd seen it before. Derek had a pattern, and I was going to make sure Haley broke it. The day I made my move, I invited her to lunch. It wasn't casual. I made it look casual, but every word was rehearsed. We sat at a rooftop cafe 3 blocks from the office. I picked the location because it had a clear view of Derek's window. As we sipped overpriced smoothies and made small talk, I timed it perfectly. Right when she was relaxed, right when she let her guard down. I leaned forward and asked her, "So, how long have you and Derek been seeing each other?" Her eyes widened. She choked on her drink. "What? I don't." I smiled. Calm, confident. "It's okay. I'm not angry. I already know. I'm just wondering if he told you the truth." She didn't answer, just stared at me like I'd cracked open her diary. So I kept going. Because he told me he was working late. He told me he was alone. He told me I was imagining things. Haley's hands were trembling now. "And the funny thing is," I continued, voice low, "he told the last girl the same thing about me." There it was, the moment I saw it click. The realization that she wasn't special, that she was just the next one, that eventually she'd be replaced too. That was the first crack, and through that crack, I started pouring the truth. Not all at once, slowly, carefully, strategically, because when you want someone to turn on the man who seduced them, you don't scream, you whisper. I didn't expect Haley to believe me immediately, and she didn't. She sat there in silence, her smoothie melting untouched, her eyes darting around like I was setting her up. I could see the doubt in her, the shame fighting with denial. She wanted to believe Derek. Of course she did. He made her feel chosen, important, desired. He used the same lines on her he once used on me. The "I'm not like other men." The "you're special." The "I've never met anyone who makes me feel the way you do." Lies, all of it. But when you're young and in love, or at least flattered, you don't hear the pattern. You only hear the part meant for you. So I didn't push her. I gave her space, and I let time do its thing. A few days later, she showed up at my desk. She didn't say much, just looked at me, eyes hollow, and said, "I think I need to talk to you." I took her to the cafe again. Same spot, different energy. This time she came with questions. "When did it start? How long were you together? Did he ever mention me?" I answered everything. Calmly, honestly. I didn't add drama. I didn't throw insults. I just told her the truth. And that was all it took. That night, she didn't go home with him. The next week, she avoided him at work. By the end of the month, she was done pretending. But she wasn't done with him. Not yet. And that's when I knew. I had her. You see, I didn't want to just break them up. That would have been too easy. Too boring. No. I wanted Derek to experience exactly what he put me through. Confusion. Insecurity. The slow unraveling of trust. The fear of not knowing when the rug would be pulled. So I gave Haley a choice. I laid it out like a business plan. No emotions. Just facts. He's going to do to you what he did to me. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next year. But it will happen. That's who he is. She nodded. Silent. "So, what do you want to do with that information?" She stared at me for a long time. Then said, "I want him to feel it. The same way I felt it." And just like that, we became partners. Strange, right? Two women who were manipulated by the same man, teaming up to take him down. But revenge makes you forge unusual alliances. And the enemy of your enemy? Well, sometimes she becomes your sharpest weapon. We started small. Haley kept playing the role. Dutiful assistant, sweet girlfriend, quiet and devoted. Meanwhile, she began collecting things. Little things. Password screenshots. Audio recordings. Duplicate files. Bank statements. I didn't tell her what to get. I let her find what felt right. Because when someone's been lied to, the hunger for truth becomes natural. Addictive. And she didn't disappoint. In 3 weeks, she had more dirt on Derek than I ever did in 3 years. Fraudulent expense reports. A shell company under his brother's name. Emails to clients that crossed ethical lines. even a text message thread with a married investor's wife. The man wasn't just a cheater. He was a risk. To the company, to his career, to anyone who got too close. Which gave me an idea. We wouldn't just ruin his love life. We'd ruin his legacy. But to do that, we needed timing. And leverage. That's when I called in a favor. My old boss, Janice, had recently moved up to VP of Strategy. She was tough, sharp, and, unlike Derek, completely by the book. I told her I had some information she needed to see. She was hesitant. I could feel her guarding herself. Office politics were tricky, so I gave her one file. Just one. An email where Derek promised a client an illegal kickback in exchange for an under-the-table deal. Her tone changed immediately. "Where did you get this?" "I'd rather not say," I replied. She narrowed her eyes. "If this is real, I need more." "You'll have it. Just give me 1 week." She gave me 5 days. Haley and I spent every night building the file, categorizing evidence, backing up emails. We didn't just want to expose Derek. We wanted to make sure there was no way he could spin the story. On the 5th day, I handed Janice the full report. Printed, bound, indexed. She didn't thank me. She didn't smile. She just said, "This is enough." And I knew what that meant. Within 48 hours, there was a scheduled board meeting. The whispers began. HR got involved. Legal started making quiet phone calls. And Derek? He was still clueless, still walking around the office like he owned the place, still flirting with Haley in the elevator, still calling me late at night, asking if I wanted to grab a drink and talk like old times. That one made me laugh. I declined, of course. And the very next morning, he was summoned to the executive floor. He didn't come back for hours. When he finally walked out, his face was pale, his jaw clenched, his hands shaking. I watched him from across the lobby. He didn't even look at me. That's when I knew. He knew. But it wasn't over. Not yet. You see, Derek didn't get fired. Not right away. He was put on probation pending further investigation. That's what the official statement said. But the truth? He was being squeezed out, stripped of deals, pulled off accounts, his authority fading. And while all this was happening, Haley? She got promoted. Not to VP. Not yet. But to executive liaison, reporting directly to the board. It was a sudden move. Some people questioned it, but no one argued with the board's decision. She earned their trust, and I made sure she kept it. Every document she delivered I reviewed. Every report we cleaned. And little by little, Haley stopped being Derek's assistant and started becoming his replacement. She wore sharper clothes, spoke with more command, learned the numbers, the lingo, the power moves. And Derek? He started watching her, like he didn't know who she was anymore. Like the sweet little girl he used to text at midnight had been replaced by someone else. And she had, because I built her, and she was going to finish what we started. But the real twist? He still thought I was out of it. He thought this was between him and Haley. He didn't realize. I never left the game. I just moved to a different board. Derek once told me that control was everything. That the moment you lost control, even for a second, you lost everything. I wonder if he remembered saying that the day he walked into the office and found Haley sitting in his seat. It wasn't permanent. Not officially. She was just holding the position, temporarily, while the board conducted its review. But that didn't matter. The moment he saw her behind that glass desk, reviewing documents he used to sign, speaking to clients he used to command, something inside him cracked. I saw it. The way his jaw clenched. The way he tried to smile but couldn't hide the twitch in his eye. He walked right past me like I was invisible. But I wasn't invisible. I was watching every move. And he wasn't just losing control. He was unraveling. Over the next few days, I heard things. Derek showed up late to meetings. He cursed at an intern. He accidentally deleted an entire folder from the shared drive, one Haley had spent all weekend preparing. He was slipping. and I made sure everyone noticed. Janice kept me updated. She trusted me now. She said I had a good eye for cracks in the system. She had no idea how true that was. Derek started drinking more. Not the usual scotch at the end of the day. This was different. Sloppier. Less elegant. He stopped shaving. Stopped wearing his tailored suits. One day he showed up in a wrinkled shirt and mismatched socks. The whispers turned into conversations. The conversations turned into doubt. And soon, people started saying the unthinkable. Maybe Derek isn't VP material anymore. That's when I knew the moment was close. But I wasn't ready to end it yet, because there was still one more piece of the puzzle I needed to place. Haley. She was doing well, almost too well. She was poised, sharp, respected. But there was a shift in her too. She'd tasted power, and it was changing her. In the beginning, she needed me. She texted me after every meeting, asked for my advice, leaned on my insight. But now she was quiet, detached. One morning, she didn't respond to my message for 48 hours. When she finally did, it was a single line. Sorry, just been swamped. That was when I realized something I hadn't expected. Haley wasn't just playing a role anymore. She was becoming the role. She didn't want to just help me take Derek down. She wanted to take his place, and maybe leave me behind too. I'll admit it, that shook me, because I had spent so much time building this plan, shaping her moves, giving her the confidence to rise. And now that she was up there, she was looking down at me. That couldn't happen, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that when you give someone power, you better make sure they remember who handed it to them. So I invited her to dinner. Someplace quiet, classy, neutral ground. She showed up 20 minutes late, wearing the kind of dress I used to wear when I went to events with Derek. Polished, confident, expensive. She looked like a woman who had arrived. But I saw something else in her eyes. Distance. Calculation. She smiled, hugged me, made small talk. But I could feel it, the subtle shift. She thought she didn't need me anymore. So I let her talk. Let her brag about new deals, new meetings, a lunch she had with one of the company's biggest investors. And when she finally took a breath, I leaned in and said quietly, I'm proud of you, Haley. But just remember, if Derek finds out we were ever working together, this whole thing collapses. She froze, just for a second, but it was enough. I kept going. You're doing great, but don't confuse momentum with protection. You've earned their attention, not their loyalty. That can disappear fast. She blinked, swallowed hard, then said, I know what I'm doing, Olivia. I smiled. Good. Then you won't mind keeping me looped in, just in case something unexpected happens. There it was. Control. Back in my hands. Haley needed to rise, but not too far, because she wasn't the queen in this game. She was a piece, a powerful one, but still movable. And the king? Well, he was about to fall. 2 days later, the board met again. The investigation had concluded. The evidence was clear. Derek had violated at least 3 internal ethics policies, compromised client trust, and created a toxic environment for junior staff. The official statement would be resignation, a generous package, discretion, reputation mostly intact. But it didn't matter. Everyone knew. He was done. He didn't speak to me that day, didn't even look at me, just packed his things, signed the papers, and left the building like a ghost. It should have felt like victory, and it did, for a moment. But the funny thing about revenge? It doesn't always feel the way you think it will. I didn't feel euphoric or triumphant. I felt steady, calm, like I had restored a balance that was off for too long, like something that had been broken was now back in place. But it wasn't over. Not yet, because Haley had just been offered the interim VP role. And suddenly, the woman who once looked at me like a mentor was now sitting in the office that once belonged to my ex, wearing his watch, using his words, moving like him. That's when it hit me. This game, it never really ends. You just swap players, and sometimes the piece you thought you controlled learns how to move on her own. I used to think revenge ended when the enemy fell, but I was wrong. Sometimes revenge just opens the door to something much more complicated. And sometimes the person you train to fight alongside you starts sharpening the knife for someone else. After Derek resigned, Haley stepped into the interim VP role so easily, so confidently, you'd think she was born for it. The board praised her for her grace under pressure and her natural leadership. She started changing the office, small things at first, new team structures, a reshuffling of accounts, more meetings with senior clients. But then came the bigger moves, budget approvals, layoff discussions, rewriting company policy, and that's when I felt it. The shift. Haley wasn't just filling Derek's shoes. She was redesigning the whole floor they stood on. At first, I was proud. I really was. Watching her evolve from a soft-spoken assistant to a powerful leader made me feel capable, like my plan had worked. But pride faded quickly when I realized something else. She had stopped answering my calls. She wasn't asking for advice anymore, wasn't sending updates, wasn't checking in. So I visited her office. I didn't make an appointment. I didn't think I needed one. But when I got to the glass doors, her new assistant, a girl named Jenna, looked up and said, "Ms. James is in a meeting." I smiled politely. "That's fine. I'll wait." Jenna gave me a tight smile. "She's booked the rest of the day." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. So I left. And that's when the questions started forming in my mind. Was she just busy? Or was she cutting me out? I told myself not to overreact. Maybe it was just a hectic week. Maybe she was overwhelmed. But then I heard something that made my stomach twist. At a company happy hour, I overheard two account managers talking. One of them said, "Haley's already making more moves than Derek ever did. She's planning a full departmental restructure. Even marketing's on the table." Marketing. My department. The one place I still had power. I approached her the next morning, cornered her by the elevators. "Hey," I said casually. "Got a second?" She looked startled, then smiled like nothing had happened. "Of course. Everything okay?" I didn't answer her question. "I heard about the restructure." She hesitated. "It's still in draft form." "But it's happening." She nodded. "It's time for some changes." Changes. That word again. What happens to my role? I asked. She looked away, and I saw it, the flicker of hesitation, the discomfort. "I don't know yet," she said. And just like that, I knew. Haley wasn't my ally anymore. She wasn't just taking Derek's place. She was doing exactly what he did, cutting off the past, rebranding the present, controlling the future. She had learned from the best, and by best I mean worst. I should have been furious. I should have screamed at her, reminded her how she got here, reminded her who fed her the plan and set it all in motion. But I didn't, because screaming would have made me look weak. And weak women don't survive in places like this. Instead, I smiled and said, "Keep me in the loop." She smiled back. Of course. She was lying, and I let her, because I wasn't done playing. I spent the next few days digging, not into Derek this time, but into Haley, her schedule, her calls, her contacts. I had old access points. She hadn't changed all the systems yet. I found something. A string of calendar invites with one of the firm's biggest investors, Simon Roth. Simon was powerful, wealthy, and notoriously careful about who he backed. And according to the calendar, he and Haley had been meeting alone. Late dinners, private bookings, multiple times a week. Now maybe it was business. Maybe she was pitching something new. Or maybe she was repeating history. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had destroyed a man for cheating with his assistant. And now my assistant, my creation, was getting too close to a man she should have kept professional boundaries with. I needed confirmation. So I followed her. I know how that sounds. But I didn't care. One night, I waited near the private garage Simon always used downtown. He was predictable. Expensive tastes, fancy cars, routine habits. I saw her arrive. Alone. Wearing the same red coat she'd worn the day I first confronted her about Derek. She met Simon at the elevator. They hugged. Then he kissed her cheek. And she let him. It didn't look like business. It looked like seduction. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. Haley wasn't just replacing Derek. She was becoming him. Using charm, influence, intimacy. The same way she once fell for the wrong man, now she was the wrong woman. And I had made her that way. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about a legacy. And if I didn't act soon, mine would be erased. So I started building again. Quietly, carefully, one thread at a time. Not to take her down, not yet. I still wasn't sure what her endgame was. But I needed insurance. Leverage. Just like I had with Derek. Because this wasn't just Haley's story anymore. It was mine again. And I wasn't going to let someone else write the ending. When I was building my revenge, I never thought the person I'd have to watch out for would be the same woman I trained to help me. But that's how these things go, don't they? You think you're in control. You think you've thought 5 steps ahead. Then the game changes. The rules change. And you realize you're not just fighting an enemy. You're fighting your own reflection. That's what Haley had become. A younger, sharper version of me, only colder, hungrier, and far more reckless. I spent weeks watching her from the shadows. She thought I was distracted, maybe even defeated. But I wasn't. I was preparing. I started collecting again. Old emails, Slack messages, voice recordings I'd forgotten I even had. You'd be surprised what people say when they still trust you. And Haley? She used to trust me completely. She had told me things, little things at the time, that now felt dangerous. Like how she once accessed Derek's private account without his knowledge. Or how she edited a pitch deck to make Derek's numbers look worse during the board review. Back then, it was all part of our plan. Necessary. Justified. Now, it was evidence. And I wasn't the only one with doubts. Whispers had started. The restructuring had made a few senior employees uncomfortable. Some saw Haley's moves as too fast, too aggressive, too personal. People started asking why I wasn't more involved. Why I wasn't invited to meetings anymore. Why the woman who once guided Haley had been pushed into the background. I played dumb, smiled, said I was focusing on internal strategy. But I was really building something big. And to finish it, I needed help from someone I never thought I'd speak to again. Derek. I know how that sounds. Trust me, it tasted like poison just saying his name. But he had something I didn't. A reason to hate Haley. And hatred, when directed properly, is one hell of a motivator. I didn't contact him directly. I used a mutual friend, someone who'd stayed neutral during the fallout. He set up a meeting. Private. Discreet. No one else knew. Derek showed up looking rougher than I expected. Less polished. Less smug. But the arrogance? Still there. Just hidden beneath a layer of damage. We sat across from each other in silence for a moment. Then he said, I was wondering how long it would take for you to crawl back. I smiled. I'm not crawling, Derek. I'm leading. Something you clearly forgot how to do. That shut him up for a moment. Then he leaned back. So what do you want? I slid a folder across the table. Inside, screenshots, meeting logs, timeline breakdowns. All pointing to one thing. Haley wasn't just climbing the ladder. She was cutting it behind her. She used both of us, I said. And now she's positioning herself to own everything. He stared at the papers, jaw tightening. She's sleeping with Roth. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. We both knew it was true. He looked up at me, eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. You want to bring her down? No, I said quietly. I want to take back what's mine. He was silent for a long time. Then he nodded. And just like that, the strangest alliance I've ever made was born. We didn't trust each other. We didn't like each other. But we needed each other. He had contacts. Former allies, still loyal to him. He still had access to internal databases no one had deactivated yet. And most importantly, he knew Haley's weaknesses. She gets cocky, he told me. When she thinks she's ahead, she gets sloppy. That's all I needed. We started setting traps. Emails baited with false leads. A fake vendor contract with questionable language, planted where she'd find it and take credit for catching it. And she did. She brought it to the board like she'd discovered gold. What she didn't know was that the contract was tied to a shell company Derek had used years ago, one that still had his name on it. The board raised questions. Why was a defunct vendor from Derek's era still in the system? Who had brought it up? Why did Haley think this was relevant now? The timing looked suspicious. The trust started to crack. And while that happened, I made my next move. A one-on-one meeting with Simon Roth. It wasn't easy. He rarely met with anyone outside the C-suite. But I knew how to get his attention. I sent him a message. You're backing a woman who's using your name to climb and hiding the rope once she's up. He replied within an hour. We met at his private club. No press. No records. Simon was sharp, efficient, and not interested in drama. I brought proof, not gossip. Screenshots. Messages. A voice recording of Haley saying, Simon thinks he's guiding me, but he's just another hand to shake until I get the real power. He listened, said nothing. Then he asked one question. What do you want? I smiled. Balance. A week later, Haley was pulled from a major acquisition meeting. No warning. No explanation. Simon had shifted his support publicly. He began talking to me again. Started copying me on strategy threads. And Haley? She noticed. Oh, she noticed. She came to my office the next day, unannounced. Closed the door behind her. Did you do this? She asked. Her voice wasn't angry. It was sharp, controlled, like a snake coiled just beneath her skin. I looked at her calmly. I gave you everything, I said, and you used it to erase me. She crossed her arms. You used me first. I smiled. Maybe. But I didn't forget who built me. She stared at me long and hard, then said, This isn't over. I nodded. I know. And I meant it. Because this story, it still had a few moves left. There's something strange about watching a person slowly become the enemy you warn them about. Even stranger, realizing you trained them to be that way. That's what it felt like, sitting across from Haley after she stormed into my office. The girl I once protected had hardened into something sharp, unrecognizable. Not the lost, impressionable assistant who'd once confessed her secrets to me over lattes. No, now she was polished steel, and I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't coming to negotiate. She was warning me this was war. I didn't flinch. I didn't rise to meet her tone. That would have given her power, and I'd already given her too much. After she left, I stared at the door for a long time. She thought she was in control now. But control isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about timing, precision, influence. And I still had one thing she didn't. Loyalty. Not from the top. Those positions always change hands. But from the middle. The overlooked. The essential. The ones who actually make the company move. And they remembered me. Because I wasn't just marketing Olivia. I was the one who brought them coffee on launch days, stayed after hours to cover mistakes, stood up for assistants who were blamed for things their bosses messed up. I had roots, and when roots get shaken, they hold. The rumors started to shift again. People noticed the change. They saw how Haley stopped walking the halls like she used to. No more casual greetings. No more check-ins. Everything was top-down, curt cold. She was trying to run the company like a fortress. But people don't follow walls. They follow leaders. That's when Jamie from HR pulled me aside in the parking garage. She glanced over her shoulder, lowered her voice, and said, I think she's planning to restructure again, this time to streamline upper management. Your name's been flagged. I didn't blink. Of course she was. Haley wasn't content with pushing me out of the spotlight. She wanted to remove me from the board entirely. It wasn't personal anymore, it was tactical. But the thing is, when you make things that personal for me, I stop playing defense. I go straight for the heart. I spent that weekend digging. Not into Haley's professional missteps. That angle was already too familiar. No, this time I looked into her personal life. Not to smear her, not to destroy her public image, but to find the thing she was trying to protect. Because everyone has something. Even the coldest, most composed people. There's always a pressure point. And with Haley, it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't Simon Roth. It wasn't even Derek, though she still hadn't spoken to him since the board flipped. It was her father, a retired tech executive, quiet, off the grid, not public-facing, but well-known in venture capital circles. She once told me he was the reason she got into corporate life, that he raised her alone after her mom left, that he always said, "Make your name before you fall in love, or you'll spend your life chasing someone else's." He was proud of her, fiercely. She had never wanted him to know about the affair with Derek, or the way she climbed, or how dirty the game got. She wanted him to see her as the good one, the one who made it without shortcuts. And I realized that was her weakness. Image. Not public image. Family image. So I paid him a visit. I didn't ambush him. I set a meeting. Told him I worked closely with Haley, and I wanted to speak privately about a potential brand campaign using legacy leadership stories. He agreed, politely. Curious. We met at a quiet diner just outside the city. He was soft-spoken, intelligent, careful with his words, and I made sure to be careful with mine. I didn't accuse. I didn't expose. I just told him a version of the truth, that there were internal concerns, that Haley had risen fast, too fast in some eyes, that certain board members were questioning her loyalty and transparency. And then I said this. Sometimes people get lost chasing power, and sometimes they forget the values that helped them rise in the first place. He didn't say much, just stirred his coffee and stared out the window. Then he said, "That doesn't sound like the daughter I raised." I smiled gently. Maybe not, but maybe it's the woman she became trying to live up to your expectations. I left it at that. No blackmail, no threats, just doubt, planted carefully. By Monday, word got back to me. Haley missed a morning meeting. She looked rattled all day, and someone saw her crying in the stairwell. She was cracking, and I wasn't done. That same week, I leaked a story to a quiet industry blog. Just a few sentences. An anonymous tip about the revolving door at the top of our company. About how leadership changes had become too personal. About a young VP rising on charisma instead of contribution. It didn't name her, but everyone in our circle knew who it was about. And the best part? It didn't come from me. I used a proxy contact, a freelance writer I once mentored, someone who owed me a favor. By the end of the week, Haley called a staff meeting. Closed door. Mandatory. She stood there in her expensive suit, looking every bit the leader she'd worked so hard to become. But I saw it. The hesitation in her hands. The tightness in her throat. She spoke about false narratives, internal sabotage, and regaining trust. It was clean, practiced, almost impressive, but the room didn't buy it, because when a leader has to defend themselves that hard, people stop following and start questioning. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Simon Roth. Short, direct. "We're reviewing Haley's position. You should be ready." "Ready for what?" I asked. He paused, then said, "Leadership changes tend to come full circle." Then he hung up. I sat there in silence for a long time, because I knew what he meant. This wasn't about replacing Derek anymore, or even stopping Haley. It was about restoration. And in that moment, I realized something else. The best revenge? It's not about watching your enemies fall. It's about building something they can't take from you, then letting them watch from the outside. I should have felt victorious. The woman who tried to erase me was unraveling. My seat at the table was being polished for my return. Even Simon Roth, who once barely acknowledged me, was speaking in half-coded offers. But here's the thing about revenge. It doesn't end when your enemy begins to fall. It ends when you stop needing them to. And I wasn't there yet. Not even close. Haley's days were numbered. Everyone felt it. The air at the office shifted. Her name was no longer followed by admiration. It came with caution, side eyes, unfinished sentences. Even the assistants, who usually stayed neutral, had stopped defending her. She tried to regain control, called for a surprise audit to ensure compliance across all departments. She was looking for cracks, trying to flesh out who had turned against her. But the move backfired. All it did was stir more resentment. Even Derek, who'd sworn he was done with internal drama, emailed me a single sentence after the announcement. "She's drowning. Let her." I didn't respond, not because I disagreed, but because, for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted her to. Something had been gnawing at me. A feeling. A question. Why had she pushed so hard? Why had she risked everything just to replace Derek? She could have played it safer, slower, but she didn't. She torched bridges she hadn't even crossed yet. And that didn't feel like strategy. It felt like desperation. So I did something I hadn't done since the start. I stopped moving forward and started looking backward. I pulled old files, meeting notes from before Derek's exit, memos Haley had sent me, ones I'd archived without much thought. And there it was, buried in a financial proposal from 9 months ago. A name I didn't recognize, Braymark Holdings. At the time, it had seemed like just another minor vendor. Now, I remembered something else. Simon Roth had briefly mentioned Braymark during one of our private conversations. He'd called them persistent but non-essential. Why were they on our internal proposals? I dug deeper. Braymark wasn't a vendor. They were a private holding group. Small, quiet, based in Connecticut. And recently, they'd started acquiring small amounts of shares in our company through different shell firms. I followed the trail, and I found it. The same shell firms were tied to Haley's father. She wasn't just climbing to the top for pride. She was trying to control the board for a reason. Her father had been buying pieces of the company, quietly. She was trying to secure his position from the inside. This wasn't just about power. It was about legacy. And if she'd succeeded, they would have owned a majority stake. That's why she pushed Derek out. Why she let the affair explode. Why she pulled me closer, only to turn on me later. Because for her plan to work, she needed no one watching. No one asking questions. And I'd almost handed her that silence on a silver platter. But not now. Now I had proof. And I had a choice. I could destroy her. Send this to the board. Leak it to the press. Wipe her name off our company history. Or I could use it. Because leverage is more powerful than exposure. Exposure ends someone. Leverage keeps them useful. I printed out everything. Built a file. Then scheduled a meeting with her. No warning. No drama. Just a subject line: "We need to talk." She came. Alone. Defensive. I didn't waste time. I placed the folder in front of her. Said nothing. She opened it. Flipped through it. And I watched the color drain from her face. When she finally looked at me, her voice was low. "Hello. How long have you known?" "Long enough." She was silent. Then she said, "It's not what it looks like." "Then explain it." She hesitated. "It's my dad's idea. He wanted to protect the company. He thought Derek would sell it off in 5 years. You know he would have. And you thought the best way to fix that was to become him." Her jaw clenched. "You don't understand." "I do," I said. "More than you think. I know what it feels like to watch something you love fall into the wrong hands. I know what it feels like to want to control it, to save it before someone else ruins it." She didn't respond. I leaned forward. But you did it wrong. You cut corners. Burned people. You made enemies where you needed allies. She looked at me, eyes tired. The war in her voice was gone. So what now? She asked. You going to bury me? I stared at her. Then I said something I never thought I would. No. I'm going to give you a choice. She blinked. You step back. Quietly. No more board votes. No more influence. You become a silent executive for the next 12 months. And in return, I don't expose this. Your father keeps his shares. You keep your name. She looked stunned. Why? Because I don't want your ashes, Haley, I said. I want your silence. And I want my company back. She didn't argue. She just nodded once. And just like that, it was done. Or so I thought. Later that week, I received an envelope at my desk. No name. No return address. Inside, photos. Old ones. Me. Derek. Haley. Private moments. Office drinks. Close conversations. And one more photo. Me, kissing Derek. Back before everything blew up. A note was tucked beneath it. You're not the only one who knows how to use silence. I stared at it for a long time. Then I smiled. Because if she wanted to play that game, I was just getting started. I stared at the photos for a long time. Not because I was afraid of them, but because they reminded me who I used to be. Back when I believed love and ambition could live in the same room without choking each other. Back when Derek's smile still felt like safety, not sabotage. The photos weren't scandalous. Not really. Just close enough to suggest a deeper story. A whisper campaign waiting to start. I'd kissed Derek in that photo, yes. But it was years ago. Before Haley. Before the war. Before any of us knew how far things would go. But context doesn't matter in corporate politics. Perception is everything. And Haley had found a way to twist mine. She wasn't going down quietly after all. This was a warning. A threat wrapped in nostalgia. If I came for her again, she'd burn us both. The note didn't scare me. What did scare me was how easy it would be for her to follow through. People already suspected things between Derek and me were never fully over. The late-night meetings. The quiet conversations. One whisper, and I'd be painted the same as her. And the part that stung? She wasn't wrong. There was a time I let feelings blur the lines. Before I saw who he really was. Before I knew what loyalty didn't look like. But I wasn't that woman anymore. She was gone. Buried under every lie, betrayal, and late-night plan I'd built to survive this game. Still, the note made something clear. This wasn't over. And if Haley was still willing to fight, then I had to finish it for good. The next morning I met with Derek. Not at the office. Not even in the city. A small cafe in the hills, no eyes, no ears. He looked older than the last time we met. Less polished. Less sure. He nodded at the photos on the table, already aware. She sent them to me, too, he said. She's spiraling. No, I said. She's planning. He exhaled. What do you want from me? I met his eyes. Help me end this. He raised an eyebrow. Why should I? Because she's not just trying to hold power anymore, I said. She's trying to rewrite everything we built. He looked away, jaw clenched. I should have never let her in. No, I said. You should have never let her replace me. The words landed heavy between us. He didn't deny it. Didn't apologize either. Just stared into his coffee like it held an answer he didn't want to say out loud. Finally, he said, "What's your play?" Transparency, I said. Controlled exposure. The board gets a version of the truth. Just enough to freeze her out completely. No public scandal. No career-ending press. But a quiet exit, irrevocable. He narrowed his eyes. And if I refuse? I leaned forward. Then she releases the rest. And you get caught in the crossfire too. His jaw twitched. He wasn't afraid for himself. He was afraid for his name. His legacy. Men like Derek don't fear destruction. They fear obscurity. He nodded once. Fine. But this is the last time I clean up your mess. I smiled. Funny. I was about to say the same to you. We parted without a handshake. Just two ghosts walking out of a fire they'd both started. Back at the office, things moved fast. Simon called a board meeting for strategic alignment. Haley wasn't invited. The following Monday, her resignation was quietly circulated in a single internal email, effective immediately, focusing on personal development and family health. Everyone knew it was fake, but no one asked questions, because in this world, silence is respect, and survival depends on how well you pretend to believe the lie. I thought I'd feel relief, satisfaction, maybe even joy, but all I felt was empty. The war was over, and I'd won, but winning felt quieter than I expected. There was no applause, no parade, just an empty office, a tired smile, and a view of the skyline that looked smaller than it used to. I walked past Haley's old office that afternoon. It was already cleared out. Her nameplate was gone. Her perfume had faded. No trace of her left, except the silence. I should have been proud, but something inside me whispered, this isn't the end. And I was right. That evening, as I packed up to leave, I found a second envelope on my chair. No name, no note, just a thumb drive. I plugged it into my laptop, heart pounding. One folder, titled, You're Not Clean Either. Inside, emails, voice memos, photos, from Derek, from me, from board members I thought were loyal. She'd been collecting evidence for months. If released, it wouldn't destroy me completely, but it would crack me. Enough to force a leave. Enough to question my rise. She'd built a dead man switch. One last move. One last threat. Even in defeat, she made sure her ghost could still haunt me. I sat back in my chair, heart cold. She was gone, but the game wasn't, because even when you win in this world, someone always leaves the next trap behind. And suddenly I realized I wasn't done. I couldn't be, because revenge isn't just a story. It's a cycle, and I was still in it. You'd think after everything, the betrayal, the takedown, the buried secrets, I'd be numb to surprises by now. But that drive Haley left me, that was different. She could have destroyed me with it. She didn't. Not yet. Which meant one of two things. Either she still wanted to control the board from the shadows, or she wanted me to know she still could. I didn't panic. Not on the outside. I shut my laptop, locked the drive away, and smiled at every person who passed me on the way out of the office. But my mind wouldn't stop. Why hadn't she used it? And more importantly, who helped her build it? Haley was smart, but she didn't have the access for some of those recordings. Some of those emails were from devices only a few people could have touched. And that's when it hit me. She hadn't done it alone. She had help. From the inside, I made a list that night. Everyone who had something to gain from my fall. The ones I overlooked. The ones I trusted too quickly. And one name kept circling back. Rachel Lynn. My operations lead. Quiet. Loyal. Always one step behind me. In meetings, in strategy, in decision-making. Too quiet in retrospect. I'd brought her into my inner circle 6 months ago. Gave her direct access to systems. Trusted her with things I didn't even trust legal with. She was with me through Derek's downfall. She was with me through Haley's rise. And suddenly, her proximity didn't feel comforting. It felt dangerous. The next morning, I asked Jenna, Haley's old assistant, now mine, to pull Rachel's access logs. I told her it was for an internal audit. No red flags, just a routine check. But what I found wasn't routine at all. Rachel had been in and out of archives I hadn't touched in over a year. Personal folders, legal files, employee HR records, even my private backup. The kind of thing no one touches unless they're preparing for war. I sat at my desk, the city humming quietly outside, and felt something I hadn't in months. A cold, pulsing anger. Not the rage I felt when Derek betrayed me. Not the calculated heat I used to take Haley down. This was different. This was personal. I called Rachel into my office. She came in like nothing was wrong, wore that same neat blazer, smiled like usual. I offered her a seat. She sat. I slid the printed logs across the table. She glanced down, didn't react, then looked up and said, "So this is where the mask comes off." I blinked. "You're not going to deny it." She gave me a small, tired smile. What would be the point? My throat tightened. How long? She looked me dead in the eye. "Since Derek." That knocked the air out of me. "You were his." I asked, barely above a whisper. "I was mine," she said, "but he gave me a reason. At first, I thought I was just helping protect the company. Then things got blurry." "And Haley?" I asked. "You gave her my data?" "She didn't take it," Rachel said. "She earned it. She asked questions you never did. Listened better. Saw further. You're defending her?" I laughed. "After everything." "She played the game better than you," Rachel said simply. "Until she didn't." I wanted to scream. Wanted to drag her out by her collar and expose her to the board. But then I realized something. She had just admitted everything. No lawyer. No defense. Which meant she didn't care if I knew. She wanted me to. "You knew I'd find out," I said. She nodded. "So why tell me now?" Rachel leaned in slightly. "Because you're planning something else. I know you. You won't let Haley's thumb drive sit forever. You'll make your next move. And I want in." That silenced me. "You betrayed me, stole from me, helped two people try to destroy me, and now you want in." She nodded. "Because I know what comes next, and I'm the only one who can help you survive it." I folded my arms. "Then tell me, what's coming?" Rachel reached into her bag and pulled out a plain black folder. Inside, documents. Financial ones. But not ours. Simon Roth's. She placed it on my desk. Watched my face as I flipped through them. Offshore accounts. Quiet payments. A stake transfer agreement. To Braymark Holdings. Haley's father's company. And the dates? Recent. Post-resignation. My mouth went dry. "He's still backing them," I said. Rachel nodded. "He never stopped. Haley stepping down was just phase 1. Phase 2 starts in 4 weeks." "What's phase 2? I asked. Rachel's voice was steady. "Cold. They're starting a new firm, pulling 3 of our top clients, and launching with Haley as external strategy lead. She won't be on the books, but she'll be pulling every string." My skin prickled. Everything I'd done, every trap I'd set, and she still found a way to crawl out. "I have proof," Rachel said, "if you want it." I didn't answer right away, because deep down I already knew I'd take it. Not because I trusted Rachel, but because she was right. I'd need someone who saw the whole board, even if I hated her for it. I leaned back, staring at the skyline again. Same city, different war. And I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was survival. One final round. And this time, I'd burn the whole boardroom down if I had to. I didn't sleep the night Rachel gave me those files. Part of me wanted to storm into Simon Roth's office, throw the folder in his face, and tear down every false wall he'd built. Another part of me wanted to walk away, not out of fear, out of exhaustion. But power doesn't just hand itself over. Not in boardrooms. Not in betrayal. Not in business. If I wanted to end this, it had to be total. No half measures. No mercy. So I called in every favor I had left. Lawyers. Analysts. Journalists I hadn't spoken to in years. We worked in secret. Quiet. Focused. And then I leaked it. Not everything. Just enough. A news article published under an anonymous source. Title: Former CEO connected to offshore moves, shadow firm emerges. It didn't name Haley. Not directly, but it mentioned Simon and Braymark Holdings. And it painted enough of the picture for people to start asking the right questions. The market trembled. Our clients called. The board panicked. And within 72 hours, Simon Roth was stepping away for health reasons. Of course, they gave him a severance, a golden parachute, but he was gone. And just like that, the last piece of their power structure fell. I expected a phone call from Haley. I got a handwritten note instead. You win. For now. No name. Just that. I tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. Because she didn't get the final word. I did. In the weeks that followed, things stabilized. I was named interim CEO. The media cooled down. Investors backed off the edge. And slowly the silence returned. But not the peace. Because I wasn't the same person who walked into this company 5 years ago. Back then, I believed in hard work, in loyalty, in rising together. Now, I believed in leverage. I believed in calculated trust. And I believed that every person in power has something to lose, and someone willing to take it. I kept Rachel, not because I forgave her, but because sometimes it's better to keep the fox inside the henhouse where you can see her. She reports directly to me now. I watch her. She watches me. It's not friendship. It's alignment. And that's all I need. I don't speak to Derek anymore. He sent flowers after the announcement. I sent them back. He chose his side a long time ago, and I chose mine. I used to think revenge would feel like justice, like closure, but it doesn't. It feels like an empty office with too many windows. It feels like finally sitting at the top of the ladder and realizing there's no one left to pull you up or push you down. Only yourself. But here's what I know now. Survival isn't about being the loudest or even the smartest. It's about knowing when to strike and when to disappear. Haley will try again someday. I know that. But next time, she won't find the same Olivia Carter waiting. She'll find someone colder, stronger, more dangerous. Because I didn't just survive this story. I rewrote it. And that is my legacy. If you enjoyed Olivia Carter's Revenge and want more powerful, dramatic stories like this, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Revenge Fury. Fire. Your support keeps the stories coming. Who knows? The next one might be yours.